UN is an international organization founded in 1945. It's made up of 193 member states who come together to discuss and take action on issues confronting humanity in our time. So that includes peace and security, climate change, sustainable development, human rights, terrorism, humanitarian issues, and many, many other issues. Well, the communion needs representation at the United Nations because there is so much expertise around the communion that can help answer some of the biggest questions of the 21st century. And alone, member states cannot answer those questions. So the UN system really needs civil society organisations and non-governmental organisations like the Anglican Communion to be involved in those discussions, to bring experiences from the front lines to help solve those problems. The benefits of our representation at the UN might not always be immediately obvious, but there are lots of really positive ways in which we see those benefits. That representation means that the real lived experiences of Anglicans all around the world can be shared directly with global decision makers. For example, the impact of conflict, of climate change, of injustices towards women or indigenous communities. And through our representation, we are able to engage with decision makers throughout the UN system to raise up these issues and to suggest solutions that might not have been thought of or considered by others. And it also gives our leaders the opportunity to speak from an Anglican perspective on global issues. For example, in 2018, the Archbishop of Canterbury addressed the UN Security Council about peace and reconciliation issues.
The Church and other faith communities are intimately present where there are conflicts. We cannot and will not walk away from them. For example, in South Sudan, church leaders, including the leader of the country's Anglican Church, Archbishop Justin Badi, are playing an increasingly important role in moving the whole peace process beyond the current roadblocks you so well know.
And that work we've seen have an impact in how other parts of the UN and other countries talk about reconciliation within peace building work across the UN. So we can see these really positive impacts. It's also really important for us to build relationships with UN officials nationally, in national offices and internationally, to help them better understand what it means to work in partnership with faith-based organisations and other civil society actors to increase faith literacy and to make them more comfortable with working with us as key partners. Some of the key issues that we're talking to the UN about at the moment include climate change. We're preparing for the major UN climate change negotiations happening in the UK in 2021, and we will be talking to the UN about ensuring that those who are most vulnerable to the effects of climate change are at the heart of the global response, and that financing for adaptation and mitigation is directed towards those most in need. We're also talking to the UN and engaging on issues around displacement, migration, and refugees. We want to ensure that states are taking their obligations to those who have been displaced seriously, and making sure that there are humane responses and that people-centered responses are at the heart of how we protect those who have been displaced. We're also engaging with the UN on women's rights. The ACC has just submitted its statement ahead of the UN Commission on the Status of Women gathering next year. Again, we've been focused on frontline and grassroots responses to issues around women's rights, particularly in terms of tackling gender-based violence and ensuring that there is equal and fair representation of women and girls in decision making, particularly in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we've also recently been supporting, alongside other faith-based organisations, a call from religious leaders to cancel the debts of those countries most affected by COVID-19. And that's a call that's directed towards the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. So we are really trying to put at the heart of all that we do in our engagement with the UN, those who are most vulnerable and those who are being forgotten by more powerful actors in the world. We would love prayer for our work. We would value prayer for wisdom on the issues that we speak out on the issues we advocate on, how to approach those issues. We also value prayer for those who we engage with, that they would be open to hearing what we have to say, that they would hear the input coming from the Anglican Communion and from our communities around the world, and that input would have a significant impact on how we respond to issues. And I think we also really need to pray for our global leaders, for wisdom, for compassion, and really for a greater sense of commonality within the global community. I think that's so important for us at the moment, that we value what we can achieve when we work together. As we commemorate the 75th anniversary of the United Nations and celebrate all that it has achieved in that time, I think we need to look forward and recommit ourselves to the values that underpin the UN. And as Anglicans as well, I think we need to encourage the UN to be all that it can be, and to continue to practice peace, to seek justice, and in our global diversity, to walk together in fraternity.